Cold calling is one of the most challenging parts about sales. Most of the time, prospects have no idea who you are, your company, or your solution. This is why so many think cold calling is dead. The reality is that it does work when you know what you're doing. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can start your own cold calls and show the exact methodology I use to book meetings and close deals that range from 10K to multiple seven-figure deals on multi-year contracts. But here's the best part. I'm not going to give you just some generic training. I'm going to teach you the how and the why. And I'm going to pull from one of my private client trainings in which clients are paying me literally multiple four figures up to six figures to get access to this gold. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's talk about the types of leads. This is stuff that I wish I knew when I really started, because this made a lot of sense because I was at a startup. We were trying to figure everything out. So there's really three types of leads. So first off, there are what's called seeds, nets, and spears. Now, if you have read Aaron Ross's and built to $100 million a year, back in the early days, he talks about seeds, nets, and spears. And this is where I got the concept from. So first off, there's seeds, which is basic stuff like word of mouth, referrals, long-term relationships. So this is stuff that takes a long time typically for companies to build up for a while. Like you think about a company like Salesforce, like if you work for Salesforce, everybody knows Salesforce, especially in that specific space. If they have not been around at all, if this is a brand new company, there's no real word of mouth, there's no real referrals, no one really knows who you are. It's just different. Now, that's more from a company perspective, but then there's also as an individual contributor. So as an individual contributor, when you work a territory for a while, whether it's geographic or industry or whatever, over time, if you consistently show up and do an excellent job with your prospects, you will get referrals, word of mouth, etc., and you'll constantly be able to generate leads that come just naturally your way. Again, this is a long-term game. It's not as controllable in terms of how fast can you make it happen because you're doing it off trust. It's a long game. That's why it's called seeds. You got to plant in a seed. It takes a long time for it to turn into a tree with fruit, etc. But that's important to understand. Next, there are nets. This is what's known as one-to-many. So this is like throwing a big wide net out there and hoping you catch something, all right? And for example, for a lot of companies, that could be if they have a webinar. If you work for, say, Gong, and Gong has a webinar on whatever, there are going to be webinar leads coming to people opting in to do that. Those are leads that the salespeople usually are calling on. Then there's going to be lead magnet downloads. So this could be anything that's going to be something cool, shiny, new, useful to the target market. This could be PDF downloads, case studies, white papers, trainings, cheat sheets, etc. This stuff, again, this is typically what the companies are putting together, the marketing teams are putting together, and they're collecting leads and information from these people who are opting in, and those are leads potentially that you might be calling on as well. Then there could be social media posts as well. Let's put a net out there. Hopefully you capture some leads from there. Then there could be from traffic sources such as cold or warm traffic ads, etc. That's like nets. Now, as a sales professional, unless you're wearing many hats, you're not going to deal with some of these nets out there. But some of the nets you can have are like social media posts. So if you recall back into putting posts out there, et cetera, and copy in some of the prior sections, that's considered a net. So if you're putting content out there, that's a net as well. And that's one to many. So that means it's to everyone. Not everyone's going to want it. Then there's spears. That's one-to-one, okay? So that's very targeted outbound emails, calls, direct messages, mailers, gifting, walk-ins, if you're walking into businesses, etc. This, as a sales professional, you have the most control on because you are doing the outbound messaging, calls, etc. You have control on this. And this is where you can really move the needle if you do it really effectively. And I share these so you understand all three types because when you start thinking this way, it's really a simple system. So if you think from a seed perspective, if you do a really good job with the prospects, you're going to naturally generate word of mouth referrals, long-term relationships, and upsells, etc. If you think about the nets perspective, you're putting stuff out there like social media. Again, that's a long game, but you'll generate leads over time. And then if you're putting spears out there, spears typically you have to use the fastest response and fastest results from because you can control that as well. And then if you're really lucky, your company has been around for a little bit, they do a really good job, and they also have a lot of different nets out there for you, and they'll generate inbound leads for you to work off of. And they're not necessarily inbound leads like demos getting booked on the calendar, but they could just be people saying, hey, I have this problem, I want to download this free guide, and now you have an opportunity to potentially book a meeting with them. Okay, so important to understand just from a holistic perspective, so you see really where leads come from. Now, here's the thing. As a quick recap, you can't always control a lead flow at your company, but you can play the long game for seeds, and you can execute spears immediately. I'll give you examples. My very first sales role, we had no inbound leads. We were a startup division of a major Fortune 500 company. Even though the business consumer side was really well known, everyone knew them. On the B2B side, no one knew who we were. For me, taking over a territory, starting a territory, there were no seeds. So I planted a lot of seeds, and that took a lot of time. I didn't really know too much about nets quite yet at the time, and because our company was so old, so we didn't do any of that. So I was heavily spears and playing the long game of seeds. And over time, because we got really good at all these spears, I basically had to become the marketing machine and the outbound machine for myself and my teams. And we grew over time, and eventually got to the point where we started getting word of mouth, we started getting referrals, we started having people calling us, say, hey, I heard you did a good job with so-and-so, I want to get some help as well. And that was really powerful. But when you understand that, you can always control this, but just always play a long game, so this way you can generate seeds down the road, okay? So that's just a holistic view. I want you to understand that. Now, let's dive into a few notes about outbound prospecting before we dive into some of the frameworks. Here's the thing. Majority of mediums will work if your targeting and messaging is solid. So this is why I find it's really funny when someone's, oh, this method is better than that method. This method doesn't work. That method doesn't work. Here's the thing. If you have really good targeting and really good messaging, it's going to work, okay? And it's not like, hey, this is right, this is wrong. A lot of methods work if it's done effectively. That's just the truth, okay? Like, oftentimes people try to go chase shiny new ways of doing things, like, oh, this is what's hot right now, we should try this method here. Yeah, maybe it works right now, but at the end of the day, what are the core strategies based on? So, like, you may have different tactics that change, but core strategies are still based on human behavior and psychology. Those things don't change. Like, we've been wired the same way for thousands of years. So this is why we spent so much time early on with mapping out the ideal customer profile, understanding the customer awareness journey, because ultimately tactics change, but core strategies don't really change. So let me give you an example here. One tactic is sending video messages. The core strategy, though, when you really break it down, is, hey, it's basically you're building trust quickly. You're humanizing the experience, and you're standing out to get a prospect's attention. That's the core strategy at the heart of it, right? A long time ago, it was, I guess some companies still do this, physically walking in, okay? Like, that was how you would stand out, build trust quickly, and create attention. At one point, it was sending Telegram messages. At one point, it was writing, some companies still do this, long-form sales letters. Like, I still get them even to this day from financial services companies to my house. I look up like, this is the longest sales letter. It's actually pretty good, but they do it in a way where they're trying to build trust quickly. They're still doing similar things that don't change. They haven't changed their tactic, but at the end of the day, tactics change, but core strategies do not change. So now that you understand that, I do want to share with you, these are 7 timeless laws that will overfill your calendar. These applied 15 years ago when I first got into B2B sales at the time of this recording, and it still applies today at the time of this recording right now. And if you understand these timeless laws and just really internalize these versus trying to memorize these, you'll see these things still apply regardless of when it is. All right, so let's break it down so you can have a good understanding of this. So law number one, KISS. Keep it simple, superhero, okay? Things should be very simple and easy to understand. Like, you want to make it so a 5th grader or younger can understand it. Ideally, if you copy down from your emails to what you say on the phones down to a 1st or 2nd grader can understand it, you'll actually have more throughput with your sales process. Because remember, when you're doing outbound messaging, it's calls or emails, people are busy, so you're actually interrupting whatever they're doing. So they need to be able to understand very quickly what's going on. So if you have kids, I think you'll appreciate this next example here. So it's as if you are busy trying to write a work email, and suddenly, let's say a 7th grade kid asks you how to break down certain complex equations in geometry. Actually, I don't even know what kids study in seventh grade, but something crazy. And you're like, unless you're a math whiz, you're like, what? And you're just totally thrown off, and it's hard for you to focus. And you really naturally probably don't even want to do it. Okay, human beings are the same way. When they're busy doing something, whatever they're doing, you call, you email them, they're stopping to look at, they decide whether to read this email, to answer this phone call, to have a conversation with you. It's got to be very simple. So if you confuse them, you'll lose them. That's whether it's a cold call or email. So for example here, you can use tools like HemingwayApp.com, which is completely free. We open it up here, and here it tells you like if the things are complex, easy to read, or whatever, and grade level. That's a very simple tool. So we'll come back to this more a little bit later, but keep it very simple. Keep it simple, superhero. Law number 2, focus on them. Really, it's all about the prospect. So think back to the customer awareness journey. So for example, here, if I go back to stages of awareness, depending what stage they're at, they don't even know that they have a problem. Most people, they don't know the problem, or they know the problem, but they don't know what the solution is. So you want to focus on them. So really, what you want to think, again, what needs to be sold of these things, you're focusing on them. They're not thinking about you. It's usually, if you're doing cold emails, it's all about you. This is a mistake I see a lot of people make. They send an email out, hey Marcus, here's what we do. Here's bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3. Here we're super awesome, do these things. And they've already lost me. So you want to focus on them, their pains, their issues, their worries, etc. Okay, so you're really just thinking, again, similar to what we discussed before, you're focusing typically in unaware stage. Most people don't have as marketers. For sales professionals, you're usually in the problem aware to solution aware, right? So when in doubt, go to problem aware. When in doubt, go to problem aware, leading with symptomatic pains. Remember, they do not care about your product, company, or you. Now, it might be a little different if you're in B2C, right? If you're like trying to sell a product of some sort in B2C, but typically in B2B, you want to focus on these specific things. All right. Law number 3, sell the next step. One of the key things is in anything, whether it's on a cold call, an email, you really should have one primary goal. What's your one thing you want to get done, right? Which is ideally sell the next step. So sometimes the mistake I see some people make with emails is, first off, make it super complex, and then they'll also focus on themselves. They'll focus on what the company can do for the prospect, and then they have like multiple calls to action, which is, hey, so if you're interested, book a call here. If you want to learn more, click this link here. That's just too much already. It's too much. So it's got to be very simple. So like you want to reduce their friction. So each step sells the next step and not the product. So for example, your subject line sells to read the first line of the email. Your first line of the email should sell to read the second line, and so on. When you cold call doing outbound, you're selling the appointment, not the product. You're not calling saying, hey, do you want to buy? You're selling the appointment, because on the appointment, then you get to actually have a discovery and do a true deep dive and really understand all the core things that you need to cover in discovery. So just your law number 3, just sell the next step. Each step sells the next step. Really key. Law number 4, your vibe attracts your tribe. Law number 4, your vibe attracts your tribe. So your attitude needs to reflect that you are of equal status and of value to your prospect. That's from the confidence that you have, the energy you have, and the conviction. And some of you might be like, oh, Marcus, I'm not like you. I don't have this energy. I'm actually an ambivert, right? So I'm actually more naturally introverted than extroverted, but I need to show up. And I realized this a long time ago because I would call prospects. It just sounded really weak and not of value to them, so they'd hang up. And this is actually what ends up happening for a lot of, say, new SDRs, new BDRs, new AEs who have never done outbound before. When they're calling prospects, their attitude or even how they write their emails shows zero confidence and of zero value. If you want to earn their time, you have to show them you're going to be of value for them. And that's in everything that you do. If they do not believe you can truly help them value, they're not going to spend time with you. Especially if you're selling to the enterprise, like they don't want to talk to what they believe is some low-level person. They want to talk to someone who can truly help them, a consultant. So really important. If they don't believe you are of value, I'm not going to want to meet with you. So the mistake I hear some people make on the phones is they try to handle the objection, and because they lack confidence, the prospect says they're not interested, and the rep says something like, let's just meet for 10 minutes and just see if it's good fit. Worst case scenario, you're out 10 minutes. Here's the thing. If someone told me that, I'd be like, well, shoot, like 10 minutes is really important to me. I'm not going to waste 10 minutes doing that. I'm not going to waste 10 minutes just to waste 10 minutes. Like, I'm very busy. So you want to have that mind space of like, all right, what's the vibe I want to put out? When I call a prospect, when I write an email, what's my energy going to be like? Am I going to be of equal status, like I'm a peer to them? Or am I going to be cowering to them like a subservient person who they can just step on? This is big. This is really big. This is why when you talk to the most successful salespeople, they have an insane amount of confidence and conviction because they know they're of value. They can really help people. Even if the prospect is rude to them, they don't really care because, simply put, they know their own worth, right? They know themselves. They are worth it. So remember, your vibe attracts your tribe, because you can have the best cold call frameworks, best permission-based openers, but if your vibe is terrible on the phones and your objection handling is terrible on the phones, they will feel it out and just say no to you. And this is also key for when you get rejected as well. If you're getting rejected, do you maintain the same vibe too? Very important. Law number 5, the fortune is in the follow-up. So you really want to be consistent follow-up. This is omni-channel. So it should be a mix of calls, emails, social media, etc. This is very key. The mistake I see people make is, oh, I made one call, they didn't call me back. Oh, I did one email, they didn't email me back. Oh, I did one of each, and they didn't message me back. If it was that easy, then everyone would be like super filthy rich in sales, okay? But the truth is, the fortune's in the follow-up. And most salespeople are really bad at follow-up. So you want to make sure you're leveraging your CRM to stay organized, to make sure you're properly following up. Because it may take 6, 10, 15, potentially even 20 or more touches to actually even get that first meeting as well. Because remember, people are busy. It could be time. It could be anything. Just remember that. So you want to be consistent and follow up. All right, law number 6. Oh, by the way, in addition to that, when you are consistent, you follow up, they can feel your vibe too, just so you know. They can feel your vibe, and they can see you're a pro. The rookie rep reaches out a few times and give up. But if it's a truly good, qualified prospect, you did your homework, you want to work the opportunity until they basically tell you, go pound sand. All right, very important. All right, law number 6. The separation is in the preparation. There are many things you cannot control, but one of the things you can control is your ability to prepare. That's in everything. So from an outbound perspective, preparing a quality list, researching in advance, understanding your ICP, understanding the most common objections. So this is why, again, doing that proper research in advance can really help. Or if you've been in the role for a while, you should know some of these things. Practicing every framework until it's become a base instinct. This is huge. This is why we covered base instincts before, because similar to the pro athletes, once you are on the call and they give you a strange objection, does it sound like it's the first time you ever heard it? Or does it sound like you've done it thousands of times? And I'll give you a really good example. So this is back in 2011. I was getting pretty good at sales, I'd say, and a lot of confidence on the phones. And I remember, because I was in a new role, and I was doing pretty well, booking a lot of meetings. And I got this one objection. And I remember getting this objection. And in hindsight, when I tell you, I'm like, that sounds really stupid, Marcus. I can't believe you totally botched that. But I totally did, and I didn't get the appointment. And the prospect said to me, yeah, I'm good. And I'm like, what? You're good? And I was confused. And they're like, yeah, we're good. And I'm like, okay. And that was my approach. And then they basically just hung up on me. And the thing was, what I didn't realize at the time was even that objection of I'm good really basically meant I'm just not interested. That's it. That's all it really means. But for me, immediately they felt that they like, okay, this guy is what he's doing. He's brand new. And they steamrolled me and whatever. So that's why you want to make sure you control controllables, such as practicing a framework until it becomes a base instinct. So it's literally as if you've done it thousands of times, right? And the way I really pictured, it's as if they're like throwing you that objection. You're able to be so in the zone in the moment. It's like slow motion coming at you. So you can get that objection and just throw it right back at them. That's how good you must become in preparation. And that's how you become just absolutely next level. All right, number 7, detach from the outcome and focus on the process. I'm going to say that again because this is a big one. Whether it's even from closing or to booking meetings, law number 7, detach from the outcome and focus on the process. Okay? And this might be hard, especially if you have a heavy outbound role, But regardless of how great you are, nobody books 100% on outbound. I didn't, okay? The best people in the world don't, right? The best athletes in the world don't win every single game, every championship. Like, no one books 100% on outbound. And you will get rejected. That's just a reality. You can have the best emails in the world, the best frameworks in the world, the best objection handling in the world, but you're going to have people who just are not going to like you. It is what it is. So when you understand that, you can just relax a little bit. It's okay, I need to detach from this. So understand you're going to get rejected, so you want to prepare for the worst and expect the best. You want to prepare for the worst and expect the best. This is very powerful. So I'll give you examples. Something that I developed over time was my mindset on how many objections to expect on the phones specifically. Meaning, when I started getting pretty good at the phones, it was very rare that after my opener, whether it was a permission-based opener or a direct script or whatever, it doesn't matter. It was very rare the prospect would say, "Oh, cool, that sounds great, let's meet." It would like rarely happen. I can count on one hand how many times that's happened in my 15-year career in sales. Like, there's almost always an objection or two minimum before getting the meeting. I knew that. So I'm like, okay, makes sense. So that's why there are those specific frameworks that you learn objection handling that takes you through 5 no's, right? So if you can mentally prepare for 4 or 5 no's, suddenly now, when they're throwing you their surface level objections, they have to really think now. And most of the time they're like, okay, and eventually, because you're just so good on the phones, you'll book it on the 3rd no. And that's really powerful. And when you start thinking this way, because you're willing and you understand that most people are always going to have an objection and you're preparing for the worst, if you have anything less, you're ahead of the game. You're like, oh, that was only 3 no's. No big deal. I got the meeting still. That was only 4 no's. That was only 2 no's. That becomes a huge competitive advantage. And this is what I've seen across the board. And people will say, hey, Marcus, how are you booking so many meetings? I'm like, well, part of it is I'm doing all these things that I mentioned before. And also I'm expecting that I'm going to get 5 no's. So I only get 2 or 3. I'm like, we're cooking. We're feeling good. And it became a competitive advantage because my peers were not willing to go to that level. And even though it makes logical sense, they wouldn't do it anyways because they're like, oh, I'm not really sure. But here's the thing. When you're doing outbound, like, it's going to be hard. And not everyone you talk to is going to be like, oh, yeah, cool. I'm so glad you called me. That's me. When you're doing cold outbound, I mean, they have no idea what's going on most of the time. They're worried about other problems. So if you want to be a really great salesperson, you're going to be amazed. You have to do these type of things. And the way I really think about this, if you look at, say, 100 calls, right, 100 decision makers to answer, like 10% of them are always just they're never going to book with you. It doesn't matter what you do, right? Similar, 10% will never just even do any business with you. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the other 10% will book if you're like decent on the phones. Is this going to happen? Okay, cool. That sounds good. Let's have a conversation. Great. Same thing with deals. That's why it's typically even the worst rep usually closes about 10%. Okay. Then there's the middle 80%. Those are the people that you want to move towards booking meetings and to closing as well. All right. When you start thinking this way, this is how you become the better version of you. All right. So important. Okay. Also, when you understand this and you focus on mastering the process, like you start realizing some other things as well, because if they're throwing objections, it can mean so many different things. So instead of taking it personally, because some people take it personally, eats them up alive, which I understand it's hard to detach, but when they throw an objection at you, like they're not interested, they hate your guts, don't want you to call ever again, they send you a terrible email back, unsubscribe, whatever, it can mean so many. It can mean the following. It can mean they're truly too busy, timing is truly bad, they're going through internal company changes, they're about to quit their job, they're about to be promoted, they have a contract with a competitor, they use a competitor because their CEO is friends with the competitor's CEO, they ran out of funding, are about to fold, they had a bad experience with your company, maybe they just got off a bad phone call, got reamed by their boss, maybe they just got put on a performance plan, right? So just so it's not just salespeople get put on performance plans, other roles get performance plans too, all right? They're understaffed, maybe doing 3 people's jobs, maybe their kids got in trouble at school, they just got a phone call from the principal, maybe their daycare fell through that day, maybe their dog just passed away, maybe they had a bad night's sleep, maybe they spilled coffee themselves that morning, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so moral of the story, when you get these objections, is we don't know what the real story is going on in their mind when you reach out to them. The only thing you can really control is your attitude and your action. That's it, your attitude and your action. So all you can really do is focus on running a tight process and implementing the other laws above. All right, very important. Okay, so now we have it in place for the timeless law, which again, now you can see why these are timeless. All right, these are really timeless. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and dive into some frameworks now. All right, first off, all right, here's some one that I'm going to add in, and again, the ones we covered before, they still work. This is just additional ones I want to add in here based off some of the coaching calls we've already had as well that I believe will also serve you quite well, and they all incorporate the similar things we've already covered before as well. So let's go ahead and just dive into it. So permission-based cold call openers. The reason these really work is they show you did your research. So you have to really do proper research. That's why, again, we discussed the ICP before, shows you the prospect and it's relevant. It also shows your equal status and someone of value. So the first one I'm going to share is called the mic drop method. And I'm going to take zero credit for this because this is my good friend Bilal Batrai showed me this methodology. I think it's fantastic. I like the way he broke it down. I have seen many other people also claim this to be their method. Regardless, whoever method it is, this method does work. But this is why it works. But I really do like the way Bilal explains it. So I'm gonna add my spin to it because I like it so much. I know it works well for a lot of students too. So let's break it down. So really, the opener really breaks down into really three core pieces, three sections, which is number one, the permission, number two, the problem or problems, and then number three, the cost of inaction or the priority problem. So really three things: the permission, the problem or problems, the cost of inaction, the priority or problem. All right. So if you're taking notes here, keep on taking notes because we're getting super tactical here. But again, remember the core principles I mentioned before because these still apply. This tactic might change. This works really right now. Fast forward 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, maybe it won't. So we don't know. Okay. But the core principles still are what makes it work. Let me go through and show you some examples. And this document is available for download below. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than that, actually. Here's how I kind of break the frameworks down. We're bypassing gatekeeper still. And by the way, the gatekeeper that we covered before is still my favorite gatekeeper script as well. The framework works wildly well when you follow the tonality and everything else. I mentioned the energy, your confidence, conviction is very important. So the framework's very simple. This is on the phone, all right? Hey, prospect name. It's your name with company name. And then your permission. You're going to ask for permission. And then you go into the problem. Hey, great in chatting with number of an ICP in the industry plus geography. You don't always have to have all these, but the more they feel like you're calling them intentionally, it's for them, even if your list is only these people, the more likely you are to convert as well, and you also feel more confident too. I'll give you some examples in a little bit. Then you insert the biggest problems they're most likely to deal with, and then I really do recommend, if you can, tie something really tangible. If you can, the cost of an action. How are you handling or solving big problem? So the permission, the problem, the cost of action. Let me give you an example because it actually makes more sense. You might be like, okay, what does this all mean? So here's a simple one. So here's a permission, which you can tell is very similar here. Hey, Lisa, it's Marcus with Venly. You're not expecting my call. Do you have a moment? I promise to be brief. It's very simple. It's good energy. It's confident. Okay. Now the problem. We can do section by section for you. All right. Great. In chatting with dozens of other HR execs in the SaaS space on the West Coast, one of the largest costs they're running into are increasing turnover costs in their sales department, in which each turnover can easily cost up to $100,000 more, if not more. Notice this. I'm just filling this in a little bit. How are you handling these increasing turnover costs and reducing turnover? That's it. Super simple. It's a really simple example right there. I'm just following this framework right above here. Okay. Here's another example. Okay. Here's permission. Hey, Lisa, it's Marcus Venly. You're not expecting my call. Want to hang up now, or do you want to roll the dice? Now, notice here, little pause here. Notice that this is a funnier one, so I got some personality. I'm laughing a little bit. I'm putting them at ease. I don't sound robotic, even though I'm just reading this verbatim. Now we go into the problem. Let me scroll like this. Hey, great. In chatting with 30 plus CISOs at local credit unions on the East Coast, one of the biggest issues they're running into are fake websites popping up and stealing their members' info, which is leading to major issues with identity theft and their team spending up to 10 hours a week taking these sites down, and branches are losing members to large national banks too. Cost of inaction. How are you handling these rising security costs? or risks. Very simple. So you can see like this follows a very simple format. Again, understand these frameworks, you can internalize it. It's not about reading this verbatim. This just gives you an idea of like why this works, right? Like you're asking for permission here, the problem, the cost. Here's another example right here. This is a framework 2. This is a modified version of the same type of concept. And this is just to give you some more ideas on how you can make this work. All right, so framework number 2, modified, okay? Hey, prospect name, it's your name with company name, permission. Same thing, okay? Problem, great. In chatting with very similar things, very similar ICP that we mentioned before, they're typically focused on one of 3 things, right? Or one or 2 things, and then you list out the 2 or 3 biggest problems you're most likely to deal with, and you tie to something tangible possible for the COI. All right. And then which priority or problem? I'm curious, which is your top priority? All right. For example, here, Bob is Marcus Venley. I know you weren't expecting my call. Do you mind if I take 1 minute to tell you why I called, and you can tell me if it makes sense to keep chatting? No, it's just, again, the good confidence, the energy, etc., good permission. They say, sure, what's up? Great. Hey, in chatting with CFOs at major, let me fix that real quick, at major healthcare systems, they typically tell me they're focused on one of 2 things. Fix that, sorry. 1 of 2 things. 2 things. 1, reducing the excessive waste and cost in administrative tasks, or 2, improving reporting for better decision-making across the board. Which one of those are the biggest focus for you? Simple and powerful. Again, you're asking for permission, and then you're showing that you did their business, and if you do a good job, these will resonate. Because you don't want to guess, or you want to actually know if these make sense or not. So you can see these are just very simple frameworks. At that point, they'll either tell you what the priority is, or they'll tell you they have objections, and you overcome the objections, okay? Very simple. These are very simple methods as well. These, again, bolt on. You can replace them versus a direct script or some other frameworks we discussed before, but those are really good frameworks, again, that I want to incorporate for you to show you how you can use them as well. Now, a couple additional notes. Use the ICP worksheet that we discussed above to do this, okay? So this is really, again, this is like, if you notice here, if you do a good job with filling this ICP worksheet out, this really helps you plug in to these frameworks some of these specific things, all right? So that's why I keep recommending make sure you do that exercise, because this helps you have hyper-targeted niche or hyper-targeted messaging that really resonates with your target market, okay? Also, remember the 7 laws above. If you read this if you like, they're still going to give you objections, so make sure you know that. Make sure you're still prepared. Make sure you still follow up. Make sure you still have good energy. Make sure you sell the next step. Focus on them and keep it simple. Again, these things do not change, but I want to make sure I point that out to you as well as a quick reminder, because sometimes you want to hear it multiple times for it to really sink in. Okay? And then you also still need to master objection handling as well. It's just, even though you can absolutely nail the priorities, and they're like, yeah, that's a priority, that's definitely a priority, but they're still going to give you objections. Okay, so you need to mentally be ready for that using the frameworks we discussed. I hope you enjoyed this cold calling breakdown. There is one framework I didn't cover in this robust training, which is how to bypass gatekeepers. Now, if you want my exact proven script, I'll see you in this next video right here.